What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading. Today, we're going to take a look at why the crypto market has been crashing, how much lower it could go, and why I continue to be bullish, and more importantly, when I will flip bearish. I know that's something that a lot of people have been asking, like how can I continue to be bullish even with all this price action? I'll show you guys exactly why, and I'll show you when I will personally be flipping bearish. Spoiler alert, we're nowhere near close to those levels yet. Anyways, guys, if this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, guys, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders, the better investors we're all going to become. So, of course, starting with why the crypto market has been crashing, basically since February 2nd, you can actually go back and check that. Since February 2nd, the crypto market has basically been crashing, so we're closing in on what? I think 2 months of basically prices gradually grinding lower, and of course, this is because of the tariff fears. What's kind of interesting is that we're going to get, I guess you could say, like the climax of all these tariff fears is going to happen, looks like this week on April 2nd. So that's in 2 days when Trump is going to announce reciprocal tariffs, which basically means that he's going to be applying the same tariffs that other countries have on the U.S. are the same tariffs that the U.S. will apply on other countries. Something that a lot of people don't talk about is that other countries have very high tariffs on the U.S. The U.S. actually doesn't have very high tariffs on other countries. So even though it will probably result in some small amount of tariffs, let's say, I don't know, 10 or 15%, it could actually bring down tariffs overall globally, which could actually lower costs for consumers globally. Of course, there's a lot of nuance there in terms of like tracking these tariffs and how that could disrupt supply chains and all that type of stuff. But the point being, guys, is that the main reason, of course, over the last 2 months why the crypto market has been crashing and why markets have been crashing is because of these tariff fears, which again, they started on February 2nd when Trump started talking about tariffs and, came out of nowhere saying that there would be tariffs on Canada and Mexico and stuff like that. Now we're kind of reaching, let's say, the apex, or some would say like the ending of kind of this whole 2 months of chaos, let's say. And whatever is decided on April 2nd, my personal opinion is that if it's bearish, and I guess I'll show you guys now. If we do get kind of like a bearish catalyst there with the tariffs being negative, this is Bitcoin on the daily, and of course most crypto prices will follow suit. I'll explain in just a second. But let's assume that that this announcement on Wednesday, I believe, on April 2nd, with the reciprocal tariffs, if that ends up being something that's very bearish, then Bitcoin will probably fall another 10% or so, roughly down to 72K, 71, 72K. You can see there's a pretty strong zone of support there. So somewhere in that range, somewhere around, I don't know, maybe you could dip with liquidations, maybe you could fall slightly below 70K, but somewhere around that low 70K range, 71K, 70K, maybe a wick down to 69K or something like that. That would be possible. That would be another 10% move lower, but that would actually not make me bearish, which of course people say, oh, how's that possible? How could you not be bearish? Well, I'll show you guys here on the trading view chart. If we zoom out to the monthly, if you guys watch last week's videos where I was doing kind of like a crypto trading for beginners, you'll know that the Bollinger Band is my personal favorite indicator, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, especially on the monthly. When you slap on the Bollinger Bands, it makes it very easy to tell when Bitcoin is in a bull market and when it's in a bear market. When it's below the Bollinger Band moving average on the monthly, it's in a bear market. When it's above, it's in a bull market. And as you can see, Bitcoin is very clearly in a bull market. When I look at this chart, there's no reason for me to be bearish. Of course, the reason why so many people are bearish is because altcoins have been falling a lot. But I'll come to that in a second. But the point being here is that, it's quite clear that Bitcoin is still in an uptrend. And in my opinion, if Bitcoin was to fall back down to the Bollinger Band moving average on the monthly, any drop below that level, that would be reason for me to flip bearish. That level is currently around 63K. So basically, Bitcoin would have to fall below around 63, 64K and stay below that level for a month before I would flip bearish and say, yeah, it's time to throw in the towel. But until that happens, there's no cause for concern. And even if Bitcoin was to fall another 10% from here, it would still be, like 5 or 6 or even 8K above that Bollinger Band moving average. It would still be very clearly in a bull market. And of course, the reason it doesn't feel like that and the reason why so many people get upset is because, of course, altcoins look differently, but I'll get to those in a second. And of course, guys, before I go further, I do need to show the Coin Bureau deals page here. That's where we have 20% trading fee discounts and up to $600 of bonuses on Binance. Those are the biggest deals that you can get. It's super easy to take advantage of that deal. Just go down into the description, click that link. You'll get a page that looks like this. You just enter your information. Within a couple of minutes, you're signed up to Binance. It's the world's largest crypto exchange. They have all the altcoins you could possibly need. Binance is literally the only exchange I would say that you need for trading, unless you're, like really going down the risk curve. But point being, guys, check that out. You get a trading fee discount, we get a cut of your trading fees, and the exchange gets a new user. It's a win-win-win for everyone. So do take advantage of those deals using the link down in the description. We don't just have Binance, we have other exchanges as well. If you're not a fan of Binance or already have an account there. Anyways, guys, so now moving on, I guess, to the crypto market more broadly, and especially as it relates to altcoins. So what you're looking at now here is the total crypto market cap. And basically, as you can see, similarly to Bitcoin, the total crypto market cap is quite clearly still in a bull market. So it blows my mind when people, they look at this chart and they say it's over, it's over. It's like, well, I don't see that. The uptrend is still very obvious. It's still very clear. It's just objectively, like, find me in this chart where the bear market is. And the reason why I have these circles here, guys, is to show that basically you can see that there's basically like this cup and handle pattern that formed when there would be like a cycle top, then you'd have the bear market, and then when you're moving out of the bear market, you would have basically a formation of a cup and handle pattern, and then a big breakout to the upside. What we're basically seeing now is, well, the initial stages, you could say, of the breakout of the cup and handle. Of course, for many altcoins, that breakout hasn't really happened. Again, I'll come to that. I'm getting to that in a second. But you can clearly see that we are somewhere in this range, like compared to the previous cycle. We are somewhere in the beginning stages of the breakout of this massive cup and handle pattern. And of course, the reason why it doesn't feel like that is because many altcoins have been struggling. And if we go over to the altcoin chart here, this is part of why I personally don't believe the market will be headed much lower from here, especially altcoins. As you can see that they've been respecting this trend line. We're on the weekly here, by the way, guys, before we were on the monthly. But for others here, which of course is the total crypto market cap of all altcoins outside of the top 10, and some would say it's not a very accurate measure. I'm not going to get into the nuances there. The point being in this case is that this trend line seems to have held quite nicely, basically ever since we started to see a recovery in late 2023. You can see that altcoins have basically been chopping in a range. For some altcoins, that range has been lower. A lot of altcoins have just continued bleeding lower. But the point is that as a whole, like if we just combine all the market cap of all the other altcoins, they have basically been on aggregate, they have been chopping in a range basically over the last 16 months, let's say, roughly. And from my view, that's still not reason to be bearish. Like, I guess related to to Bitcoin, if Bitcoin was to fall below the Bollinger Band moving average, again, like around 64K, that would be a reason for me to flip bearish on the market as a whole. Though, to be honest, I would also be a little bit concerned if we did see basically altcoins fall any further from here. Like if there was to be another, let's say, I don't know, 30% drawdown lower, another 10%, even 20% would be still somewhat normal, like within the range, like it's typical, to see wicks around these range, like wicks above and wicks below. So, seeing one or 2 weeks, of like a drawdown of, let's say, 10 or 20% below, that still wouldn't concern me too much. Of course, if Bitcoin was to fall another 10% from here, that would translate probably to another 20% drop in most altcoins. And again, like that would still be within a normal range, both for Bitcoin and for altcoins, but it would be very concerning. At that stage, we really would be very close to a level where I would be flipping bearish. But again, we're just still not there yet. And of course, the reason why it's been so painful is because so many people are holding altcoins, basically that a lot of people bought their altcoins, in early 2024, and they've been waiting since that time for new retail to arrive. New retail has not arrived. So for most altcoins, the chart has basically just been like down, continuing lower and lower. But the thing is, guys, and this is something I've been underscoring for a long time, is that altcoins tend to see their biggest gains at the very end of the crypto bull market, specifically around 16 to 18 months after the Bitcoin halving. Of course, the Bitcoin halving was in April last year, which, if we go, let's say, 16 to 18 months out, that gives us a basically cycle top or like a blow off top phase sometime over the summer. And again, it doesn't look like that. It doesn't feel like that when you look at altcoins individually or even as a whole. But if you look at Bitcoin, you can pretty clearly see, yeah, like I could see another, getting that the continuation of that breakout out of this cup and handle, which you can also see on Bitcoin, to a slightly lesser extent. But again, like that breakout, we're relative to the previous cycle, we're still somewhere here in this range for Bitcoin, and of course in the total crypto market cap, we're still somewhere here in this range. And I probably should have mentioned, I forgot to mention that that if we did see the total crypto market cap break below, I don't know, somewhere like 2.2 or 2.3 trillion ish, like if we did see a break below that, then that would be confirmation that the cycle is over, which would be very bizarre. I still think it's way too soon to say that. And I guess that brings me back to this chart, which is that it's still too soon to say that this cycle is different and that everything is over. If you look at Bitcoin, it looks completely normal. If you look at the total crypto market cap, it looks completely normal. It doesn't look normal for altcoins. And this is something I think I mentioned in another video about why the cycle feels different, is that basically many existing retail investors from the previous cycles, they all kind of knew what the 4-year cycle is. So when they saw the crypto market starting to rally with the spot Bitcoin ETFs in early 2024, many of them started buying buying altcoins heavily then, waiting for new retail to arrive, assuming that new retail would arrive at the end of 2024 because that's what had happened at the end of 2020. My hot take, and I guess I'll zoom out here. Yeah. So my hot take with this is basically that this idea of new retail arriving in late 2024 based on like that 2020 cycle. I think the thing that was kind of different back then was the fact that we had this pandemic, and it has less to do with the stimulus and more to do with the fact that people had the time to sit at home and trade assets. And this is kind of what resulted in this, you could say, like this first leg higher. Like you could make the argument that this first leg higher was basically new retail arriving a little bit earlier, like not all of them, but a lot of new retail arriving earlier than usual compared to previous cycles. We could, like, if it was a normal cycle, you could say that this peak would have never happened and you would have just had a gradual run up and a blow off top with most of the gains happening in that final, whatever it is, 3 to 4 month window, which is exactly what had happened in the previous cycle, that you had this gradual run up and then all the gains are made right at the very end. This is kind of like an anomaly, and same way in this cycle, this kind of quote unquote first leg higher is kind of an anomaly. And I would argue that it's actually something that's more similar to the 2019 rally, which sounds a little bit crazy, but I do think that this was basically just like a bear market rally. This was not the first leg higher. The reason it looks like that, again, is because you had so many people from the previous cycle that had learned about the 4-year cycle, and they assumed that there would be a first leg higher or whatever. And it's just really funny that like when we did get that rally at the end of the year and it didn't really materialize, people will look at this indicator and say, oh well, this is like, we had a first leg higher and a second leg higher, and now we're seeing the same thing again. But again, it's like we still haven't seen altcoins break out of this range. Like you haven't broken out of that kind of cup and handle pattern. We're still somewhere in that beginning stages of that big altcoin rally that everyone's been waiting for, which sounds crazy, and of course doesn't feel like that if you've been holding altcoins at a loss. But the fact of the matter is that, again, like when you zoom out just like at the highest level, whether it's Bitcoin, total crypto market cap, there's still no reason to be bearish in my view. And when we do see a breakdown of these structures, like a break below the Bollinger Band moving average for Bitcoin on the monthly, or a break below this $2.2 trillion level, or a significant break, let's say, I don't know, below 200 billion or 180 billion on others, until we see a significant break below these three levels, I'm going to continue to be bullish, because all that's been happening now is that we're just in a lower range. All these assets are kind of near a lower range, and they're probably going to continue grinding higher unless this time is different, which again, it's still too soon to say that. If we and I guess this ties into the time frame. If we arrive, let's say, by the end of May and we're still grinding and chopping in the zone or somewhere lower, if it's like, we're getting into the end of May and there's been no signs of recovery, then that would be a sign that, yeah, maybe this cycle is different. But again, historically speaking, the biggest gains should be coming sometime over the summer, specifically between May and September. So if we see no signs of recovery sometime by late May, then in my view, irrespective of the level of the price, that would be an indication that this cycle is different. But so far, there's nothing really to make that claim, besides the fact that many retail bought a lot of altcoins in early 2024 and have been basically holding those at a loss. And people think that it's, weird or whatever that new retail didn't arrive, but that's not really the weird part. The weird part, because new retail doesn't arrive until the very end, the weird part is that existing retail, they bought way earlier than in prior cycles. Again, you could kind of remove this peak and you would have something that looks more like a normal recovery, like bull market. I almost want to, like, with my hand to just like show you, but I think I hope that kind of makes sense there. Like this is kind of like an artificially high peak, and this is kind of like an artificially high peak. Yeah, guys, in terms of the 4-year cycle, 2025 is still going to be a big year. We're 3 months in, I guess, closing in on 4 months in. That has a lot of people feeling bearish, especially if they've been holding since early 2024 or they've been holding since 2021. And all this altcoin selling that we've seen, I think, is just capitulation from retail investors from 2021, from early 2024, who are saying, you know what, I can't take the pain anymore. I can't, I can't wait anymore. I'm hearing all this stuff about tariffs and how we're going into recession and it's all over, right? Like this narrative. And people are just throwing in the towel, and that's why altcoins have been bleeding so much. I think it's just retail investors just capitulating and saying, I can't do it. I can't do another 2 to 3 years of bear market, right? Which again, like historically speaking, I'm sorry, but we're not entering a bear market here on Bitcoin. We're not entering a bear market in the total crypto market cap. Many altcoins are still grinding lower. That's true, but as a whole, the crypto market looks fine. And again, most of these altcoins gains will happen at the final phase of the cycle, which again is probably not going to come until sometime between May and September. and I do expect all-time highs to be hit around then. And I think that all these retail investors that basically sold, these existing retail investors that had bought in the previous cycle and were holding, or bought in early 2024 and were holding, all those investors who bought and sold are basically going to become buyers, and they're all going to buy over the summer, thinking that the cycle top will come in the fall, because they'll say, oh, like in previous cycles, that's what happened. And I do think that by that, basically all that buying, all that FOMO will kind of cause the blow off top. And then by the time the fall does come around, like November, December, prices will be falling again, and we will actually be entering a bear market. That's kind of my hot take. Sorry for rambling there. I do hope that makes sense. And to close things off, though, I want to share a research feed post I did in the Coin Bureau Club here, because of course there's a lot of people that ask, like, okay, let's assume that you agree with everything I just said. Okay, like, by basically like everything is kind of looking fine. By May we should start to see some kind of recovery. What are the catalysts that will cause that recovery? I'll just read word for word here. I did a post about this recently in the Coin Bureau Club. So it's called a non-exhaustive list of upcoming crypto and macro catalysts, and I'll just read it out. So for those who don't know, the way I analyze the crypto market is to look at it through the lens of catalysts, assessing any key events or milestones that are coming up and how they could affect prices. I remember the very first time I figured this out was back in 2021. When the B word event was announced for July 2021, I felt that was when crypto would likely start recovering, and it did. And of course, coming back here to the total crypto market cap, that would have been back here, guys, in this period, over July of like basically, this crash in May, June, July. And the thing that caused that recovery was the B word event with like Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk. I'm not sure how many people remember that, but I do believe that we're kind of potentially in a similar phase somewhere around here. I know it's a little bit confusing, but point being is that was kind of the thing that caught my eyes. Like, I think that B word event is going to be the recovery out of the most recent crash, and it ended up being that. So I'm thinking, okay, well, what's going to come next? Given that we're in a similar stage in this cycle, here are the catalysts to look out for. To clarify, these are the catalysts that I believe could trigger a recovery in crypto, a recovery that eventually evolves into the cycle top, just like it did in the summer of 2021. I currently expect this recovery to begin sometime in May, and this is precisely because there are many catalysts that suggest this. So, starting with the crypto catalysts, stablecoin regulations being passed, that's expected, I believe, by the end of April, because that's within the first 100 days of Trump being in office, which is kind of the deadline they're shooting for. There's been lots of progress in the Senate and in the House. So stablecoin regulations, that's one. Multiple crypto and TradFi companies launching stablecoin/DeFi products and integrations, which of course would happen as a consequence of those stablecoin regulations primarily. And again, that's going to happen at the end of April, roughly, maybe sometime in May, and that would correspond, Bank of America, Fidelity, all these institutions, they want to launch stablecoins and all these crypto integrations that will come after the stablecoin regulations, which again will happen, looks like sometime by the end of April or in May. The SEC giving clarity around tokenized real world assets. Of course, that's another one that people are kind of still waiting for. Apparently, so this is something that the SEC could do at any time. I don't know why they haven't done it yet. And then staked Ethereum ETFs being approved after the Petra upgrade in late April or early May. Of course, there's a lot of hype around the spot of the staked Ethereum ETFs potentially being approved, but this I don't think is going to happen until the Petra upgrade, which will increase the maximum stake, because right now the maximum stake for validators, I believe, is 32 ETH. So they need to raise that cap. I think it's to 1,048 or 1,064, something like that. By raising that cap, it'll make it easier for basically these asset managers to launch staked spot Ethereum ETFs. And that will make it easier, of course, to have those stakes, the spot Ethereum ETFs. Anyways, and then we have spot altcoin ETFs being approved, starting with Solana, most likely. The recent approval of the CME and all this stuff that definitely suggests that we're going to see a spot Solana ETF sooner rather than later. We have multiple crypto conferences, the largest of which is the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas at the end of May, which in my view could be analogous to the B word event in July 2021. And of course, May, June, July is one thing I've been talking about a lot, is that from what I've seen is that the cycle top for each crypto market cycle, at least for the last two, has happened 2 months sooner than the previous one. Like the cycle top for 2017 was technically in January 2018, and then the cycle top for 2021 was of course in November 2021. So you're looking at like a 2 to 3 month pulling forward of the cycle top, which is part of why I believe the cycle top would happen sometime in August, maybe in September. Anyways, another catalyst, of course, is one that a lot of people seem to have overlooked, which is institutional FTX creditors receiving $15 billion in stablecoins, which is going to begin at the end of May. And then on the macro catalyst side, we have clarity around tariffs, which will hopefully come as soon as this week. If not, then hopefully by the end of the month. Inflation coming in lower and the economy continuing to weaken. And then the Fed cutting interest rates at its May meeting in early May. Because the Fed noted it would do 2 rate cuts in the most recent SEP, and these will happen sooner if inflation comes in lower and or the economy starts to weaken. This is something that seems very likely. Inflation does seem to be coming down based on measures like trueflation. The economy continues to weaken because a lot of companies are kind of scaling back their spending and hiring because they're concerned about these tariffs that will kind of create like a pocket, let's say, of like a few months of economic weakness, especially because a lot of the economic strength that we've seen has just been companies kind of stockpiling goods in anticipation of the tariffs. Anyway, another potential catalyst is the ceasefire in Ukraine. It's something that doesn't seem to be very likely at the time of shooting, but I do suggest, I think it's a forward guidance, some podcast from Blockworks. Felix Joven interviewed a guy named Le Shrub, who's very well known. He's a trader on Twitter/X. And his hot take is that he still sees a ceasefire happening. He thinks that's the most underpriced thing, especially, a lot of people are shrugging it off, thinking it's not going to happen. I personally think there's a good chance that that it will as well. Barring that, we could potentially get a new ceasefire in the Middle East. I heard there were some rumblings over the weekend that potentially there's going to be a new ceasefire with like hostages released or whatever. Who knows, guys? Like, honestly, it's a complete mess. One thing that is looking likely, though, I think it's officially passed, is the EU stimulus coming primarily from Germany. 1 trillion euros, I think, spent over the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is. And we're probably going to see more spending from other European countries as well. And of course, we also have China stimulus, which is likely to come in the coming months. Michael Howell, who's an expert in global liquidity, has been saying that China will start stimulating once there's been negotiation between Trump and Xi Jinping, which I believe is something that's still upcoming. So basically, on all these things, there's no shortage of reasons in my view to be bullish. April is probably going to be a very choppy month, if I'm being completely honest. I'm not expecting any massive recovery or anything in April. Some macro analysts that I listen to have been saying that by mid-April we should start to see a recovery as a result of quarterly rebalancing and after people have sold assets, because of course we have a tax season coming up, I guess in North America and in Europe. So a lot of people are selling assets going into that so they can pay their taxes. Once those taxes have been paid, then they're going to start reaccumulating. After portfolios have been rebalanced from all these asset managers, then we should see markets continuing to grind higher, especially with clarity around the tariffs. That seems to be the primary thing right now. But anyways, guys, if you did make it this far, I do hope you found that information helpful. To quickly summarize, I'll just say again, so long as Bitcoin's above 64K, I will continue to be bullish. So long as the total crypto market cap is somewhere above 2.2 trillion, I'll continue to be bullish. So long as others ideally would hold around this level. I honestly don't think it's going to go lower. I do think we're basically as low as we're going to go. But of course, I do need to be open-minded to the possibility that we will see another drop lower here on Bitcoin, another 10%, 12% drop lower, which of course would translate to another 10 to 20% drop lower in altcoins, which again would suck, but would still not be too much out of the ordinary. That's something I would stomach, and I would not flip bearish just yet. But if we were to fall significantly below, let's say 180 billion on others, then I would flip bearish. But it's not just the price level, it's also the time. If we don't start to see signs of recovery by late May, by the end of May, then I'll probably start, I guess I'll have to start thinking about what I'm going to do with my portfolio. But I do think we're going to see lots of signs of recovery by late May for all the reasons that I mentioned here. And you can either become a member of the Coin Bureau Club to see this post, or you can just rewatch what I said in the video. And anyways, guys, yeah, if you did enjoy the video, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ping that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.